Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to crack right on. We've got four sessions, then a break, then a final two before a drinks reception this afternoon. And obviously, some of the folks have signed up for a dinner that we have this evening at 6:30. But we're going to jump right into our next session. We're switching gears again a little bit here. Obviously, there's the underlying theme of AI. And I know that's probably going to be the word of the week, as it is for everyone these days. But I'd like to introduce our next speaker, which is Mindy Sabel. She leads digital platforms at Bayer. Mindy's going to be kind of walking us through her perspectives on the algorithm doesn't buy, the customer does. And obviously, Mindy's got quite an extensive background in learning algorithms and on the consumer side of things. So obviously there'll be a little bit of time at the end. I know Avinash and a few of the other folks mentioned about the patient-consumer engagement side of things during the previous panel. Obviously, there's that was a nice precursor to some of the points that Mindy will be able to share with us this afternoon. Obviously, there's a little bit of time at the end for Q&A, so again, if you'd like to ask any questions, please raise your hands. We'll swing by with a mic. And, Mindy's fun fact as well is she actually arrived here last night at midnight with her 8-week-old baby. So she drove down all the way from the New York area during a storm as well, and got in the lobby with about 100 Ecuador World Cup fans who were less than pleased after their team lost. So she's a bit of a champ. She made a lot of effort to be here. Please join me in welcoming Mindy as our next speaker this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Simon, and thank you for getting me settled so wonderfully. I'm Mindy. Nice to meet you. I am indeed on my mat leave now for my role at Bayer as head of digital platforms. It's exciting to be here to talk about a topic that's really not addressed that often in pharma contexts. I own our consumer-facing platforms, our websites, apps, CRM, first-party data strategy. So I got to think a lot about the consumer, which has been a hot topic now in the age of AI. And as all of us are, we've sat in countless meetings about how to win in the age of AI, how to rank, how to get cited, how to get recommended, how do we show up in LLMs? Because all of our org structures, our strategies, our media buying, our ruthless SEO, backlink building, all of it's becoming obsolete in this new landscape. So those are very reasonable questions that we should be asking and solving for. But ultimately, for our brand longevity, it's really the wrong question to answer. Because the algorithm at the end of the day does not buy, your customer does. Your algorithm is not going to be dealing with a headache or sitting in a waiting room or trying to remember which product their mother used. Your consumer is the one ultimately making that purchase, the one that you need to win that repeat purchase from. So if we're not careful and we do a great job, optimizing for LLMs because there are new formulas to conquer, it is a new segment in a sense, we're going to spend the next decade optimizing for machines and not humans. And working in healthcare, it is humans who will be experiencing, sometimes ingesting our products, and that's an experience that we need to win. One thing that's fascinating to me in the different shopper behaviors is trends in consumer trust and information and the way they process. People are actually trusting internet content less and less. Our consumers also have the LLMs in their pocket. They're familiar with generative AI, and they're rightfully skeptical of online content that they encounter. And still, they are turning to LLMs when it comes to getting recommendations. And what this has done with consumer trust is it's actually made it more scarce. It hasn't made it become more valuable. There's this interesting inverse relationship between visibility and discoverability and trust, and that actually puts the stake on trust more. They're more skeptical, and it means more than ever when we do win. So today what I want to talk about is how to win in this era, and those are going to be the brands that are going to be investing on building trust, both with the trust signals to feed to the LLM, but more than that, how to get that repeat customer. So firstly, AI is not replacing that trust, it's concentrating it, right? So that entire shopper funnel that we're all used to working towards as marketers, awareness, research, decisioning, purchase, that whole journey is collapsing, right? They're turning to LLMs, and AI is influencing their purchase using trust signals. AI is also smart, right? You can't just do your keyword stuffing anymore. That recommendation that your LLM will provide will rely on trust signals like ratings and reviews, customer sentiment, community groups, HCP forums. And that LLM can decipher trustworthy signals and will become increasingly optimized for that. So the question isn't so much how do we show up, it's how do we become the brand that deserves to be recommended, because that's something that can't be gamified or spoofed. So ultimately, the AI isn't creating trust, but it is reflecting it. So we need to be really careful with the products and the content that we are focusing on. Second, the shelf has moved, of course. That's the obvious point. We used to fight for end caps, visibility, PDP rankings. Yes, the shelf has shifted, but what matters to customers doesn't. And what we need to make sure is that the content that we're producing within those channels are those high trust pieces of content. So again, ratings and reviews, Q&A, voice of customer on the new digital shelf is more important than it has ever been. And this is customers that have actually used your product. And at Bayer, we've actually found something interesting. What we've discovered in a lot of our experimentation, we haven't really had any major wins or stories to tell about AI ranking, improving retention. But what we did find is that leaning into some of these trust signals had a measurable win in other metrics that we might not be looking at. We'll go back to ratings and reviews. As every CPG company does, pre-launch, we invest in sampling programs, right? We want customers to sample, write a review of their product. It'll come with a little disclaimer, but this is a critical part of our review process. And what we like about these incentivized reviews is that they're really impactful, even though they have that disclaimer. It is a trusted voice and a huge part of the compelling content on our page. One item that we were debating back and forth for years is how do we solicit reviews from consumers in a thoughtful way without a D2C business? Something that's really hard to do, right? There's no organic consumer journey that we can plug into. Our consumers are buying us on Amazon, Walmart. They don't need another annoying email in their inbox. And what we actually learned is that by thoughtfully asking consumers for their input on a product, we were able to get 25% of consumers to actually submit a review, which is an unreal conversion in any CRM program. And more than that, one of our biggest concerns about doing this is we're afraid to knock on people's doors. We don't know what they're going to answer, right? Maybe our scores will be lower. Maybe there is someone who had something cranky to say about our product that they're now going to be reminded to do. But no, we actually had higher ratings than our incentivized reviews for these solicited reviews. And we were thoughtful. The tone was really about helping other humans, sharing your experiences. Customers who hadn't been reached out to directly by the brand for years were excited, ready, and willing, significantly improved our credibility, and that had cascading effects on our overall rankings and satisfaction, and was a win we wouldn't have predicted. This is a really simple tactic. It's a CRM email. It's not any new technology. But we leaned into those trust signals, investing in new tactics without anything catchy or flashy, incentives, sweepstakes, philanthropy, right? Asking a human to share their experience. They're there, they're ready, and they are witness to how valuable of a trust marker they are. Another important consideration, which I alluded to in the beginning in the age of AI, is the experience gap. AI is amazing at discovery, right? It can scrape all of those forums and trust signals and deliver that recommendation. It won't experience that relief from your product. It won't experience whether it's actually working. And what it does do is it actually raises the stakes. People do have trust in the LLMs in their pockets. And when they get a recommendation, it is targeted, it is personalized. And we have accountability as brands to deliver the experience that's been promised. Will the experience validate what those reviews said they would do? Is this product indeed a worthy recommendation? So being found isn't the same thing as being chosen again, right? So we need to look at those repeat purchases and trusted signals because that experience gap is something AI will not be able to fill. The age of AI is leaning us humans more into being more embodied, and customers are more attuned to what the actual physical effects of our products are. So it really raises the stakes for those consumer expectations with the consumer. And we need to deliver and fill that experience gap in order to earn that repeat purchase. Another consideration that I alluded to as well, and a big part of my role is working on at Bayer, is first-party data, which actually matters more than ever. And it's a big debate, right? Is AI replacing first-party data? We can create, really specific audiences and really targeted content. What do we need our own data for? It's actually more important than ever to build, first of all, to learn from our most trusted signals and directly communicate and engage with our consumers. And many brands are not investing in this. It's interesting to see. And that opt-in from a consumer that gives you permission to contact them, to store their information, that's one of the highest trust signals that you can earn as a brand. So when you have a database of consumers who have elected into hearing from you, speaking with you, that is a very undervalued asset. And not just as a channel like we spoke about with that CRM email, you can get some wins, you can keep marketing to them as you should, but also as basic infrastructure. This should be one of your key data layers that you're looking at for optimizing your media, for building lookalikes, for using your shopper insights. There's really no reason to acquire data when you have ways of thoughtfully getting permission from your customers. And even that first ask is a really good trust signal for your brand, right? If anyone here is at a portfolio of brands, it's sometimes interesting to see how sending that same opt-in request can have vastly different experiences for different brands. Some have earned that trust, some haven't, right? So let's lean in, let's hold, store, use our first-party data in tactical ways, and make sure that we're using CRM as not just an email tool, but a way to get insights and continue honing into our consumer. At the end of the day, there's a three-pronged framework essentially for managing how to win with customers in the age of AI. The first, like we said, there's find me, right? You do have to be found. Believe me, and then choose me again. So find me is really about that discoverability, those signal availability, et cetera, making sure you're showing up, making sure you're generating those signals. Believe me is about that credibility check. Does the experience match the claims, right? Do reviews back up all your shiny social content about what your product does? And then finally, are they choosing you again? That loyalty is the biggest signal of trust you can find. And optimizing for all three is critical. Staying overly focused on find me is dangerous because as most of us who've been around more than a couple of years, right, we've already seen so many shifts in tech, and it always has the same pattern. I started my career in the dot-com boom, building e-commerce sites, and then Amazon changed everything, and Google and YouTube, we're always chasing the technology and the platform and trying to optimize for that. And again, we do need to show up, but none of those things are the customer. And the brands that will continue to focus on the customer will be the ones that win. So trust is still the most important thing. It exceeds everything else. And we need to be ruthless about thinking about every touch point of our product, every interaction, the packaging. Those are touch points that AI cannot access. And there's no sustainable wins without winning on that. So as you continue to think about AI, I would encourage you to think about not what does the algorithm want, but what would make a customer trust us enough to choose us again. And that's really my overall message from today is keep thinking about the physical experiences, mine your first-party data, build that trust, and invest where it matters. Well, thank you so much. Anyone has any questions? Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question because, yes, that's content that's really fraught with a lot of compliance considerations, right? And any of our consumer-generated content, if they're mentioning any adverse effects or even a claim beyond what we promise, we are quite limited in what we can share out. But so we actually are quite conservative in our internal usage, right? So yes, it's exciting that 25% of people responded. We were able to actually leverage only half of that, which means we need to really have more ambitious top-line goals in order to actually get usable content. And those reviews, aside from having better scores at the top of our PDPs, we used a lot of our content in actually TV commercials, social ads. Like, these are really valuable pieces of content that, generative AI will not be able to compete with.
Yes, right.
Thank you so much for the presentation. A question on the CRM portion and the first-party data. Obviously, like when a patient opts in, I love that point about that's a great trust signal. You can send to your management, hey, we have this number of opt-ins. But as the patient continues to go through the journey, visit websites, open emails, do all of these touch points, like what additional insights, actual insights are you getting from that has changed your strategy in some way in reaching customers?
It's such an interesting question because it's also a self-selected audience. So it's not necessarily indicative of all of our consumers, right? It is our higher value consumers. But even in there, what we did learn is where to focus on. Where in our overall audience do these high value consumers sit? We've had demographic insights, age brackets that were a couple of decades different than what we had even considered in our marketing. We also used them to actually create testable experiences. We've done some interesting D2C experiments, where we were able to actually have richer data sets to mine from. But yes, it is not a holistic representation of your consumers. And you need to be tactical about what kind of insights you're driving, that you're not letting your opt-in consumers completely drive your marketing strategy, which might just be people passing you on the shelf at CVS, right? So, good question.
Any additional final questions, comments for Mindy? Yes.
I'm the only one with the microphone. Okay. So you said you had really thoughtful questions. Were these pre-selected questions that you gave to customers, or was it in real time dynamically changing based on their input? Because I was thinking about the point you said you can only use half.
Yeah.
But if you had real time follow-up questions being generated to help improve the data quality or the insights you're gathering from them, I didn't know if you considered that. It's more of a creative kind of a thought forward, I guess.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think I agree with your unspoken hypothesis, is that real time would be that much more, right, rich, right? Exactly, and I'll be completely candid. We have not figured out a way to do that completely well compliantly. So we do need to have some, pre-approved answers and make sure that we're not moving beyond our claims. I think there's going to be a lot of progress soon with context management solutions for AI that will let us plug in and kind of manage context in real time. The industry is not quite there yet, but I've seen some emerging players that show promise.
I shouldn't have backed off. You will get
Question for you. Did you notice any distinct differences between the queries you were getting from patients versus caregivers, and what were those themes that rose to the top?
Yeah, there definitely were. It's interesting. Our patients tend to be more vocal about some of the sensory experiences of their healthcare products, which is an important and overlooked part that our practitioners aren't necessarily considering. So they might be really bothered that this tastes different, the texture is different. So we've learned that those things really matter. So if we ever have a new formula or anything, to really be proactive about the messaging there and make sure that we're not creating that experience gap, right? Yeah, great question.
Wonderful. Any final questions? No? All right. Well, thank you very much,
Thank
Mindy.
you.
Thank you. So we're right on time, so we're going to hop right straight